Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Margaret Pinard. You're on my channel, which means you're on Booktube. I'm an eclectic reader and an historical fiction author, and I'm looking a bit piratey today, but there's a connection, and later on you will see that. It is Wednesday. It's going to be a Wednesday wrap-up day, so thank you for coming to my regular stream time, Wednesday, 10 a.m. Pacific. I just want to make a little reminder here because there's a time limit, you got to do what you got to do. I'm going to share the screen just to point you to something here. Boop, boop, boop. All right. So this is Inception. This is looking at my own stream before we get started here. Yeah, not this one. This one here. I was looking at a tag. Yeah. Okay, so if you open up the description down there, you'll see my regular intro and then my book. I was looking at a reminder. Yeah. Okay, so if you open up the description down there, you'll see my regular intro, which was my book. Is now a reminder. Okay, so if you open up the description down there, you'll see my regular intro, which was my book. So if you want to pick up the box set, so if you open up the description down there, you'll see my regular intro, which was my book. So if you want to pick up the box set, or you open up the passages, or memories from Sage, or my book. So links to each one down below, and passages, or memories get them as gifts, or my book. If you links to each one down below, if you want to give a gift that is just or memories or adjacent, or my book, it's right there. Links there. So now that that's out of the way, Wednesday wrap up and saying hello to the chat. So Diane, hello. Diane is book cataloging. So I was asking how that was going. There's so many. Oh my goodness. I'm loving it, but also very slow at it. Definitely downsizing, but I want to see what I have first. Big sigh to start. Oh, that was me. That was my big sigh. Yes. Hello. And I set a reminder. All right. I did mute my tab. Yes. Hopefully that didn't cause a problem, but yeah. Hello, Cat Paw. 1,000 Margarets. Oh, shoot. Getting double audio. Well, I will just X out of that one in case you guys are hearing it, because I'm not hearing it because I've muted it. Weird. Okay. So hello, Julie. Hello, Julie. Hello, Kappa. Hello, Tayan. Welcome. Wednesday wrap up. So, like I said last week, I was going to have 4 at least, and I have upped it to 6. There you go. So, we got 6 books to cover that I've read in the last 2 weeks. 2 of them are library books that I will return later today. I will put a mask on and venture out into the smoke, hence the title of this stream. Okay, good. Weird. It must be because I shared the wrong tab at first and that one wasn't muted. It's supposed to be mute this site, not mute this tab. Anyway, not a big deal. It's gone. So 2 of these are from the library and I will be returning them after today. I try to do that so I can hold up the books so you can see it. 3 of these are nonfiction. 3 of these are fiction. So that's a nice, easy balance. My annual split is actually pretty close to 50-50. So that's pretty representative. I've got a classic in here, and most of the other ones are varying degrees of recent. So let's dive in. This is the last one that I talked about in, oh, I forgot to get one of the links here. In a previous stream, which is Vanishing Cornwall by Daphne du Maurier. If you didn't know, she has also written nonfiction. So on Cat Paw's recommendation, I checked out Enchanting Cornwall, which I reviewed in the last wrap-up, as well as Vanishing Cornwall, which is the earlier book. And so this one was first published in 1967, and it came out right after her husband died. So most of the text is written before he died, and then it was published right after he died. So I got this because I am going to Cornwall and I wanted to hear some of the myths and legends. That was more the enchanting book. The vanishing book is more about du Maurier's like vision of when she first came there as a child, when she moved in there and has lived in there for a long time and got lots of her inspiration. So I kind of had to close my eyes and read the parts about the plots of her novels because I haven't read any of them yet. I didn't want spoilers. And then in the 60s, it's like after her long career of writing fiction and how it's blown up a little, especially places like the Jamaica Inn, which is an actual place. And she wrote a book about it. So interesting. And, I read an extensive passage in the last wrap up, which I'll come back to. I promise. I haven't been doing that for the last like 5 or 6 streams, but I'll put a link up here for the last Wednesday wrap up, and I'll timestamp it for the quote, because the quote I read is from this page. You could see there, she's got a great photo. Her son is a photographer. Her fun is a photographer, actually. It's the Great Caradon Copper Mine north of Liskeard. So the quote that I read is about the copper industry following the tin industry, and both of them being boom and bust industries for the Cornwall area, and how that affected the populace, which was eerily familiar to Scotland and Argyll and its district's dependence on kelp. But the other page I was going to highlight, which I thought was kind of funny, is page 165. And most people, when they think of Cornwall these days, might think of Poldark. I haven't watched that show, but I do know that Cornwall has a reputation for having smugglers and pirates, hence the piratey tie-in here. But here's something that's interesting. Probably the most famous of Cornish smugglers, saluted even for his calling, which was known to all, was John Carter. Not that John Carter, who ran cargoes between the French coast and his own home above Prussia Cove, an inlet on Mounts Bay east of Cudden Point. He and his brother Harry were great sticklers for discipline and orderly conduct. No man who worked for them was allowed license of behavior, and their reputation for honesty was such that the excise men respected them, declaring that they only took what was their due. John Carter kept a public house, the King of Prussia. We'll come back to that in a second. And his fish cellars in the cliffs below the inn were storerooms for contraband. Here he mounted a battery of 6-pounders to dispel invaders, and one day let fly with them at a naval sloop of war, the Fairy, which had ventured too close inshore for his liking. This proved his undoing, temporarily at any rate, for the commander of the sloop sent his men ashore to destroy the battery, meaning like a bunch of cannons. But the King of Prussia, as his friends styled him after his own inn, continued to reign until 1807. Now, this triggered something in my memory about King of Prussia, which was, there's an area of Pennsylvania called the King of Prussia. In fact, there's a huge mall called the King of Prussia Mall. King of Prussia as a area or a town, it's a weird name for a town, has about 24,000 people. I found that out when I looked it up on Wikipedia this morning. And the town is named after the inn, which far predated the mall. The inn came about in the early 18th century, started by a couple Welsh Quakers. Now, we're getting a little complicated here. So Welsh Quakers started the inn. They called it something else. Then they sold it or had it managed by someone named Barry. So it was called Barry's Inn. But then right around 1777 or 1778, they don't exactly know on Wikipedia, it was changed from Barry's Inn to King of Prussia Inn. Now, 1777, 1778... is right around when John Carter started making his name. So I was like, did they do it because there were Prussian soldiers and they were loyalists because the Revolutionary War was starting? Or did they do it, whoever owned the inn at that point, because they admired the pirate smuggler John Carter of Cornwall, King of Prussia? His was named that because he was under Prussia Cove. Anyway, so all sorts of conspiracy theories. I just was like, wait, this is right around the same time. who actually named it. So I just thought that was fun. Hello, Gareth. Hello. Julie says, sorry about the horrible wildfire smoke. I would need goggles as well to protect my eyes. Yeah, seriously. It's not as blinding as the fog, because the fog can get really close and you can't see very far. But I can barely see Mount Tabor. I definitely can't see Mount Hood. So visibility is maybe 8 miles. Yeah. Tan says, I'm still nursing the one book I was nursing last week and the week before. Haha. I wonder if the town has that history. I bet so. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Is my theory any better or worse than Wikipedia's? Our town is just named after people who owned land here. Lame. But there's still a house with their name here, so maybe they did other things. I don't know. I'll report back. Okay, that could be fun. It's cool to know about your local history, I think. So that's Vanishing Cornwall. I finished both nonfiction books. They were both pretty interesting. Not places that I'll be able to go. None of them had any tales exactly on Bodmin Moor where I'll be going. So that's cool. But I thought that little anecdote about the American Pennsylvania connection was kind of funny. All right. Book number 2 is a classic of the Golden Age, a mystery called The Documents in the Case by Dorothy Sayers. And I got this at Half Price Books, as everyone can tell, because big old sticker on there. It's also been sold from Hodder and Stoughton, which I don't know where that is. That must be a bookstore chain. $5.95, but originally it was $1.95. It was written in 1930. I think I have like a 1980s mass market paperback. Yeah, 1984 mass market paperback, slim volume, one you can put in your pocket. Love those. Edition. So let's see. Dorothy Sayers, who's someone I wanted to give another chance because I've read her Peter Wimsey books and they're really not my style. I liked this one better. It's not part of a series. It was like a one-off. I think she was trying to challenge herself to do an epistolary novel of mystery, which is different because normally epistolary novels are somewhat literary fiction-y, right? This was a mystery for sure. Let's see. Oh, the other thing that I thought was interesting is that I read a book called Square Haunting, and I reviewed it quite a while ago now. It's a collective biography of 5 different women who lived within about 30 years of each other on Mecklenburg Square in Bloomsbury. So it's kind of like investigating the effect of having a neighborhood that was known for intellectuals and how that capital, that intellectual social capital, got passed from people to people through the years. And for example, Square Haunting featured Dorothy Sayers. So she was one of the people that was in there. There were several others that I hadn't heard of. But yeah, pretty interesting to hear about her before and then read one of her books that I liked. So I would say it's got its sordid sort of affair aspects to the action. It also definitely shows the classism in the society in the 1920s and the shifts of POV, the shifts of perspective from letter to letter make it pretty page-turny, pretty interesting. It kept my attention, which is good because I'm reading a bunch of nonfiction these days, and so I needed a little break, needed a little saucy page-turnery fiction. So that's that one. Where does it take place? Mostly London, and then a little bit further off where they're visiting something, but mostly London. Tan's asking, when is my trip? My trip is mid-September. So, yes. Leslie dropped some hearts. Hello, thank you. And that's the second book. So moving on to the third book, nonfiction. It's called Single by Nicola Slauson. Yes, living a complete life on your own terms. So I picked this up for Portland Book Week at one of the new to me bookstores that I had not been to before. And there are a couple things I thought was cool about this. Let's see, page 65. So just to summarize, basically, it's a nonfiction. It's got a little bit of memoir, but it's mostly treating a lot of different subjects, both based on statistics and studies, but also incorporating like surveys about public opinion and social pressure and what it is to be single and how you can make a life out of it, basically, on your own terms. So pretty good. This is one of the fun findings that I liked because it puts being single in a positive light. It's talking about a book by Paul Dolan. He's a professor of behavioral science at the London School of Economics, LSE, and he wrote a book called Happy Ever After about happiness. But when he polled people and had this study, people were not happy about one of the findings, which was that the healthiest and happiest population subgroup are women who never married or had children. Which is pretty funny. So yeah, I think people on all sides of that debate are angry about other people's life choices, which is not for them to say. They may be regretful, they may be jealous, whatever. But I thought that was interesting that she delves into it. Let's see, page 119. Just a couple of interesting points from the book. Page 119 has a little resource list for stories that defy the narrative. So the narrative being that you should be getting married, having kids, living a happily ever after. And she just wanted to list, books, movies, whatever that defy that narrative in case you're feeling like everyone is insisting on this happy ever after and you don't have it. And this is for Ven. Shout out to Ven. So she does include any of Terry Pratchett's works featuring Granny Weatherwax. So here's just another pointer that I need to read one of Terry Pratchett's books featuring Granny Weatherwax, which I've been recommended before. What else do we have that I thought was interesting? So page 239. Yeah, there's this interesting concept called ambiguous grief. And I could just read the quote. It's from Lori Gottlieb, a psychotherapist and writer. And I have read one of Lori Gottlieb's books. I think it's called You Should Talk to Someone About That or something like that. She wrote an article in The Atlantic entitled Dear Therapist, It's Hard to Accept Being Single. And here's the quote. In ambiguous grief, there's a murkiness to the loss. Ambiguous grief isn't more or less painful than other types of grief. It's just different. But one thing that does make it additionally challenging is that it tends to go unacknowledged. There are no condolence cards directed at the person whose spouse is there physically but not cognitively, or the person who can't have the child she dreams of, or the person whose imagined partner has never appeared. There are no community rituals in place to support these people in their grief. They don't get to take a day off work because they're heartbroken that yet another promising date turned out to be a dud, and they're back in the throes of ambiguous grief. Instead, their grief goes largely unnoticed. So I would say there's a little bit of both sides for this for me, in that it's valid that people have grief when they're mourning a vision for themselves, right? I had a really hard time adjusting to that, but now I've had 20 years. I don't think it gets any easier. Right now I'm in a transition for my calling, my vocation, and it took a long time to acknowledge burnout and then sort of finally accept I need to do something different. And so now I'm just sort of letting that sit and trying to find something different, involving myself in lots of things. So I understand that it is valid and it is a type of grief, but I don't want to call everything a type of grief that people need to make space for and tiptoe around, like, not getting. Well, I don't want to say anything because I don't want to make anyone feel bad, but just to say that there are different levels of emotional commitment, and, missing a sale or something like that is not the same level. So I just don't want to equate things that are sort of groundbreaking for some people and really need to be got over by other people. That's all I'll say. All right. So Tyann, I can't relate as someone who has barely been single with my husband since I was 19. I know. And already a mother before that. Yeah. So different row to hoe, different battles to fight. Julie says, I also read Maybe You Should Talk to Somebody. That's the title. Thank you, by Lori Gottlieb. I liked, not loved it. I thought it was really good at the time. It was quite a while ago. So I remember like it was, it had some really good points that I noted. It had the big tissue box on the front. I remember that, but yeah, not a favorite, but definitely like a good one for the time. Garrett says, totally agree. You need to respect the people that have to grieve a death too. So it needs moderation. Don't define everything like that. Exactly. Tyann says, I can see how single women would have it smoother for happiness if they want to be single. Yeah. It's like how men live longer if they are married. Yeah, that's the thing. So the study showed that like women who are married are here, and then men who are married are more happier, and then women who are not married are happier than both groups. And so people were like, that's not fair. You're like, well, we got to get something, right? I mean, we don't have security, we don't have split costs, we don't have tax benefits, we don't have emergency contacts. So you got to give us something. Okay, so let's see what else I did here. One more quote. Okay, so page 287, I thought it was interesting. She talked to someone who had made a sort of brand on Instagram around being single and making it positive. And then she found a partner, and she sort of like told some people privately before announcing it to the group, because it was actually, for her personally, it felt like a loss, because she built up such a community with other single women that it felt like a change in identity, kind of like what I'm trying to explain and go through right now. A loss of identity before she could like rebuild her routines and identity and sort of sense of self being with a partner, which is interesting, right? But then the audience on top of that was like kind of accusatory and kind of like reproached her for getting a partner, finding someone. And I was like, that's weird. So that was also explored as well. The last one I had was a quote on 320. See if that's any good. Okay. Yeah. See, this is like the difficult part and why it feels kind of weird to be single, like Tyann said, but like want something different, but try to be happy not having that. So she says, it's not the first time I have come up against this attitude. It's like it's impossible to simultaneously think two things at the same time. I am happy and comfortable being single, and I see myself finding a partner in the future and would like that for myself. Sometimes I feel sad that I haven't had a great love story yet. Sometimes I feel the lack of romantic love in my life keenly. Sometimes I just want someone to lean on. Sometimes I wish I could just share the burden of making huge life decisions with someone, and smaller ones, like what to eat for dinner. But then I can go for months without ever considering what I am lacking, and I barely think about my relationship status. Other times I can feel actively grateful that I'm doing life alone, free from having to compromise. It's complicated. It's nuanced, which is hard to share on social media. So there's some like good nuggets in here, but I think it's mostly stuff I've read before. The cool thing I noted early on is that she references Shani Silver, who is a TikToker who's built an account similarly around being single and has like a following. And so I follow her on TikTok, and she has a lot of interesting things to say. And I think that both women, I think Shani less, but Nicholas Lawson, because this is the only thing I read from her, feels a little guarded, like they're trying to not offend anyone. So they keep, what's that called? Hedging, I guess, a little bit. So like protecting themselves from someone getting angry. And you could kind of hear that. I think Shani lets rip a bit more in her TikTok account, and because it's, probably off the cuff a bit more, and she's angry at people. But yeah, this is a book, so this probably goes through more levels of editing. But every once in a while, it's nice to get a little bit of affirmation about being signal and people who are happy. She does put an epilogue in that kind of undermines her point. She went in with a gay guy friend and really wanted a baby, so she's having a baby with this friend. That's an interesting arrangement that she got up to. That's the epilogue to the book. Tan says, I never knew my mother to date. Oh, in her dating life. So I grew up the youngest of 6, but with a single mother who did it all on her own. She wanted to be single. Wow. Yeah, big age gap, only 2 kids in the home when she was a single parent. Okay. I would also argue, says Gareth, being in a long-term relationship is also nuanced and complicated. Yes. Yes. Yeah, which is why I never say if only, because you never know what happens in a close relationship. Okay, third book. So we're halfway through. Book number 4, fiction again. This is one of my favorite authors, Susanna Kearsley. She does historical fantasy, and this is The Shadowy Horses. And this is from 1997. She's been writing for so long. And okay, so I love Susanna Kearsley. In 1997, you think, oh, that's dangerous. You're going way in the backlist. You might be surprised. But you know what? It slaps. It's exactly what you would expect from Susanna Kearsley. There's rich research detail. And what's even cooler is that this one actually has an archaeology dig as part of the plot. And Susanna Kearsley, I think, master's or PhD perhaps in museum studies. So she knows exactly what an archaeology dig looks like. And it's like really cool to hear some of the equipment and processes that go along with that. So that was cool. I got to learn about archaeology as well as history. She does the humorous and slow growth romance, which I love. And it's mixed in with the antagonism, so from people and events, but also mystery. So you don't know which way it's going to go, and mysticism, because in this one, someone is connected to the past via second sight. So that helps the plot along as well. Basically, it's set in, shoot, I just forgot. Let's see. It's set in Scotland. I'm trying to remember. She had to take the bus back from Dunbar, Coldingham. It's like at the borders. It's like Scotland borders in the northeast. And she's from London. She's come up to do this job and basically doesn't know what it is. And it turns out to be someone who's doing a dig on his own property. He's old and rich and can just afford to do this, even though his entire profession thinks he's off the deep end. And the reason he knows to do this is because he has a neighbor boy who has a second sight who tells him there's ghosts here. So he thinks it's where the Roman legion that is missing, that no one knows what happened to them, actually fell and are buried. And so like, is it or isn't it, right? So it's a really good mystery. It's a really good romance. It's really good historical. So I love her books. And 1997 ain't letting no moss grow on that book. So highly recommend The Shadowy Horses. Hello. Joining late, but sounds like a good conversation. All right, I see you. Vanessa, tuned to not saying I'm streaming too, wanted to come in and love on the like button. Thank you. Fellow author Tyann says, yes, I'm on your side of that argument. Yeah. Have a good stream. To Vanessa. I'm writing that knowing my wife doesn't watch Booktube. Yeah, that's where you want to sort of like cut off the conversation. Exactly. Let the curtain descend. Okay, so book number 5. We've got The Inheritance. This is the other library book, and it's fiction by Kaveri Madhavan. Cool cover. This book I got because I realized a little later. It's from 2024, but I only realized recently that they had this book out. Kaveri Madhavan is an Irish writer and of Indian descent. So she wrote a book called The Tainted, and I read that historical fiction maybe 4 years ago. I think it came out in 2020. So I really like that one. It had a dual timeline, and they sort of intertwined with each other. And this is the same setup, but a different approach to it, I'll say. So the inheritance, let's see, what does that say? Oh, real places. Sorry, I couldn't read my handwriting for a second. So real places, including a reference to, and this is like not even the last Daphne du Maurier reference, but Hungry Hill. This is my grandparents' copy of Hungry Hill by Daphne du Maurier. It's not a first edition. It's probably like a Book of the Month Club edition kind of thing. This book is printed from the plates of the original edition. I don't know what that means. But where does it say? I can't get to the frontispiece because the page is a little bit shorter than the others. There we go. 1943, and this is published 1944. So it's like second edition maybe. But Hungry Hill. Does anyone know where Hungry Hill is? It's an actual place. You've already got one clue because Kaveri Madhavan is the author. Ah. There we go. They do fit. They just, the dust jackets make it hard. Hungry Hill, anybody? Anybody? She has a map. We love a book with a map. The Beara Peninsula, and the area that she's writing about is called Bantry Bay. So that may be a little bit more familiar to people from Irish music and poetry, but yeah, Bantry Bay. It's set in the 1980s, which I am not going to call historical. It's modern. And basically there's a young man who's running away. He's London descended from Irish folk, and he's going back to his family cottage, basically, which needs to be fixed up. He's running away from something terrible that happened to him, sort of, in London, and taking a break. And he just sort of slips right into this small, very small village community in Bantry Bay in a lovely way. But there's also a young boy in the community who is connecting across time, kind of like the boy with second sight, with historical characters that are fictional, but very close to being actually documented. So that's cool too. So this is definitely based on historical events and, you know, English invasions, battles, slaughter, horrible kind of imperialist bullshits. So yeah, so there's some good historical background in here, but the main story is about the young man who comes and is trying to figure out what to do, how to pivot in his life, right, in Bantry Bay. I loved the Cork accent. So the Cork accent in here is so good. It's in print, like, so this is going to be hard to do, but she writes it so well that it just sings in my head. I just don't know if it'll come out of my mouth right. Let's see. Mam suddenly whispered, "Mary's here. I'm not afraid. Don't say anything to her you'll regret now, Marlowe." Marlon gritted his teeth. "It's her that you need to say that to." But Mam had passed over the phone to Mary. "So Mam told you what we heard?" "I'm 29 years old, Mary." She seemed silenced by that. He heard her sighing. "Tell me about her. I hear she has a child." "Yeah, a boy called Sullivan McSwaney." "Who calls her child Sullivan, for God's sake? You called me Marlowe." "I watched his films when I was pregnant, and I couldn't call you Brando, could I?" Kitty must have had her reasons too. "Ah, Mom, look," said Mary loudly, as if calling out to her mother. "Look, we have a name." "Stop playing the Egypt, Mary, as if I don't know Mam's beside you, her ear pressed to the other side of this feckin' phone. What do you both like, for God's sake?" Mary was a bit conciliatory then. "Jesus, Marlowe, it was hard for us to hear it from that Crowley woman." Anyway, it's just funny. The likes build up. It just makes me laugh when I hear a particularly good line. Of course, I didn't like mark a passage that had a particularly good line, but I did just pick that one out because I thought it was funny. Really well written dialogue, action, mystery, like supernatural bits. Really fun time. So Gareth says, I meant to tell you that I think you'd like Adrian Tchaikovsky's latest, a fantasy set in 1848, crime-busting cats. Okay, so we're not spiders anymore. Well, now there's a chance. You may have been there. I don't know. Catpaw says, I do. Yeah, Hungry Hill. My son didn't know. He's a geography expert. Oh, okay. So Hungry Hill is a real place in Bantry Bay. Yeah, there we go. And yes, I'm not calling the 1980s historical. I would say the 1950s are not historical, but I think that's stretching it a bit. Yeah, I think you're right. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. Yeah, there you go. You just stretch it out there. So anyway, so that was fun. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we've got one more. And it is also Irish. So this is nonfiction again. So we're back to nonfiction. 3 and 3 this time. 32 words for field. This is by Margaret Magan. It was written in 2020. Published in 2020. Wow. All right. The 1980s thing has just sent me back in time. Sorry about that. 2020. It's a wide-ranging musings about language and culture, right? So basically, lost words of the Irish landscape with a pretty cover, almost like a woodcut. So Margaret Magan is an Irish speaker from a young age and has spent a lot of time researching the origin of words. And he wrote this book, like I said, it's like musings that range far and wide about how the Irish describe things, how old their language is, how it makes people think, how they get a certain mindset from it, relationship with things like the land and fairies and the supernatural and things you don't know about. And then there's lots of other just fun things that are related. So a couple of the notes I took were page 45. Let's see. Here's a quote from an earlier chapter. I could delve deeper into the similarities and interrelatedness of waves and shields in Irish, but the principal notion here is that almost any two elements of Irish have intrinsic connections. That is just the way of things with ancient cultures. They form an ecosystem that is as interconnected and nuanced as any biosphere. And I thought that was so cool because, you know, in this corner of Booktube, we have our biblioserendipity shout-outs, which is when you're reading more than one book and one book talks about another. Like when you read Nicholas Lawson's Single and she references Shani Silver's book, which I've also read from the library, or Vanishing Cornwall, when Daphne du Maurier points out the copper industry in Cornwall collapsing, and you think, oh, that's kind of like the Keening and the kelp industry, or, you know, et cetera, et cetera. I love finding these little things where the books are seeming to talk to each other. But this one, I wanted to coin a new term because it feels like they're talking about the meanings have so much packed into them, have so many layers, that there's so many things that could relate. You just go in a never-ending circle, right? A never-ending circle, like. And I would call that epistoserendipity, because epistemology is not, this is one of those words that I always have to look up, but it's like the study of meaning, right? And something like that. So I feel like the serendipity of the meanings, interrelatedness, it's kind of what this whole book is about. So I just thought that was neat. Let's see. 71. My next note is everything is connected. So similar quote, but now I can tell you about one of my current reads because it relates. It's a biblioserendipity moment. So this is under field names. There was an understanding that it wasn't merely a unit of production, I'm talking about a field. It was a living organism. In this view, more in line with an ecologist than with an agro-industrialist, a field was a collection of biodiverse interactions, from the microorganisms laboring away on every leaf, stem, and speck of humus, to the miles of mycelium pulsating through the soil, connecting every atom in a natural network of unfathomable complexity. Isn't that cool? So that's talking about like everything is related, everything is one. And you know who else is saying that? this book I'm reading right now, Sacred Economics by Charles Eisenstein. This is, it's like 2010, 2011. Maybe it's earlier. Trying to hold two. Nope, 2011. And so I'm reading this right now. It starts off talking about the gift economy, which was what we had for a long time before barter. And talks about why money makes everything not work like it should. So I'm really liking it. He's not like Marxist socialist. He's already turned that down. He's sort of like crafting a place for himself where, you know, money is causing all the problems and you need to get rid of separation and realize that we're all related before we can get to a new worldview. A different economic system is not going to fix it, which is kind of in line with all the people who are like, we need a whole new system because climate change, everything is coming to a halt. We're going to start over and redesign everything. So it's very interesting. Book Serendipity is the best. Yes. Epistoserendipity. That's what it was. Let's see. Epistoserendipity. Why not? So I'm probably not using it correctly, but license. So Sacred Economics. And then there was one other piece that talked about this exact thing, 216. So a bit later in the book here. Perhaps the idea of the individual and the communal being connected by the interactions between them has become harder to grasp as society has shifted towards the individual view. Yet the aim of language has always been to bridge these gaps between people, to transcend our isolation and reinforce our connection with one another and with our surroundings. Language develops and strengthens our interrelatedness with all life and reveals our empathy and the dependence we have on each other and on our world. So 3 cheers for Sacred Economics and 32 Words for Field. I feel like they're on the same wavelength. Let's see. And then another biblioserendipity moment is when there's a reference to the writer and cartographer Tim Robinson captured this withering of geographical insight in his profound and elegant way in Connemara, Listening to the Wind. Quote, Irish place names dry out when anglicized, like twigs snapped off from the tree, end quote. So this is a book I picked up and started and then didn't really get into at once, and so I put it to the side. But this is one of the books reading in preparation for the trip, because I'm going to Connemara. I'm driving through Connemara, so there we go. But yeah, it's referenced in here. Isn't that cool? They're all related, right? Every Irish person knows each other. Let's see. 80. Oh, okay. And here's a cool thing for the people in Canada. They're talking about myths. They're talking about legends. They're talking about knowledge of healing and medicine that may have died when they were persecuted and not allowed to practice their cultural practices. And he says, there is, though, one glimpse of hope. When I told an elder of the Cree First Nations people in Alberta, Canada, that we had lost the medicinal and spiritual knowledge that women would have held, he replied, as far as you know. I asked him to explain, and he continued, as far as you know, you've lost it. But how would you know? When our people were being hunted and slaughtered, we distributed our knowledge among certain people, and they went into hiding so that they could safeguard it and pass it on to others. For all you know, there may still be guardians of the lore in Ireland, but they're not going to be telling you about it. They will come forward when it feels safe to do so. So he's choosing to have a little bit of hope, and this was passed on to him by another similarly persecuted group that has lost a lot of its language and practices, the Cree First Nation in Alberta. So I thought that was really neat. I like when they link up. There's a lot of stories, tales, historical documentation about the solidarity between Native Americans and the Irish in the 19th century, kind of like what you hear about now, the Irish and the Palestinians, and like the cause and solidarity. So that's heartening. Let's see. 83, couple more notes. Oh, this is a good one. Okay. Deciphering place. So I read several books about place and like memory of place and land before I started a Booktube channel, and one of them was by Winifred. It's not Powell. Winifred something. Anyway, she's got a book about home, and she's got another book about placemaking. And this bears on that. Let's see. They're talking about druids and the oral tradition and memorizing everything and passing it on that way, and how memorizing and passing on language of your forebears is what people do, but the land also does the same thing in its own way. So he says the land holds memories within it. This is a challenging idea to us now, but it was pervasive in ancient thought. It is essentially an articulation of the soul of place. Each significant location in Ireland had a story about how its name came to be associated with it. The Jean Shankas, which I don't know how to say, is therefore a neat symbiosis of memory and land. So isn't that cool? So it kind of reminds me of The Body Keeps the Score, because it's kind of like the land is the body that's remembering. There's just psychic waves that stay with the land depending on what happened to it or how people see it and how people treat it. So it's just really interesting to think about that sort of thing. And speaking of significant locations in Ireland, my final note for this book involves we call them burial chambers, but they probably weren't burial chambers, we think now. So they call them megalithic chambers. In 1994, a group from Princeton University, led by the physicist Dr. Robert Jan, tested the megalithic chambers at Loughcrew, Newgrange, and 3 sites in England. The group found that the chambers could all sustain a strong resonance at a frequency of about 110 hertz, which is the tipping point that sparks altered patterns of activity in the prefrontal cortex. What? This frequency causes the language center of the brain to deactivate to a degree, and it causes a shift from left-sided dominance to right, the side related to emotional processing. What? Right? So we know that these chambers were constructed in a way that they observe different points of the year, like the sun coming in at solstices and things like that. But also, they were constructed in a way that the sound resonated. The easiest way to create this frequency is by singing, which makes it possible or even likely that the space was designed for chanting, with some of the standing stones positioned to enhance the chamber's acoustic properties. Perhaps they were later retrofitted to tune the natural resonance to the required frequency. The right words said at the right pitch in such a space could activate an area of the brain that behavioral scientists believe relates to mood, empathy, and social behavior. So he got into one of these that's like very claustrophobic and like chanted basically a couple lines from a poem that he knew in Irish just over and over again to try to get a feeling of what happened. And he said he was so addled that I could have sworn that the sounds were coming from inside my own head rather than from my mouth. The old woman of Beara had her grip on me. And Beara, let I remind you, is the peninsula where the inheritance took place. Isn't that cool? So yeah, so all these like cool things about the land and the place just should indicate to us all that like it deserves more respect. It shouldn't be bought and sold and covered with data centers and stripped of all its minerals and, you know, parched of all its water. You know what I mean. So yeah, really good book as well. That one took me quite a long time. That was over a month to read because it was very dense, and I was only reading like one chapter of like 3 to 4 pages at once because the words were unfamiliar. Like I know Scottish Gaelic, and it's not the same. Some of the word forms are similar, but it's not the same. So I wasn't reading any sort of language I could understand or pronounce, obviously. And so I was just taking a lot in that was unfamiliar. So I was just letting a little bit settle each time. So it took me a long time to read, but it was very good, dense and thoughtful and like magical. If you want a book to give you a bit more wonder about your world, that's a really good one. Let's see, catching up on the chat. Epistoserendipity. There we go. Diane says, I just finished the workshop I was in that discusses whiteness and racism and stuff. Copper to Gold is its name. Oh, there's a name for the workshop. Okay. .org if you want to look into it yourself. coppertogold.org. Okay. Nature is cool as fuck. Yeah. What? Right? So like sound, something that we had before writing, something that we had before money, something that we had like in early successful tight-knit societies. I just think that's so incredible. Gallagher. That's it. Power of Place by Winifred Gallagher. I did Google this. I gave you enough to find it. I'm proud of myself. And thank you. Grateful to you for finding it. Yeah. I really, really liked that book. I think I went back to another Winifred Gallagher book. The Place one and the Home one I really liked. And then I tried to read one she wrote about the post office and I couldn't get into it. I just gave it away. So healing rooms. Emotional processing. Yeah, that could be one of the uses. Very cool. That's wild and also on point, right? The workshop touches on how whiteness has made therapy this one thing, a doctor in a room with questions and conversation, where before it was music and dance and other things that were therapy. Yeah, totally. Like you've described a category and now you pinned everyone into it. Kiana, hello. Yeah, very neat connection. And it's a workshop. So coppertogold.org. That sounds really cool. Great books read, says Julie. Thank you. Okay, so 6 books for the last 2 weeks. Highly recommend several of them. If you can find them, go support your library. Request books if they're in the last 10 years. That's when you can request them from my system, or check them out. And current reads, or drop in your current reads if you have any good ones. Sacred Economics, I've already mentioned. Oh, and here's the last. Cornwall. Wait, no. I'm going to do this last. Okay, so Sacred Economics is one. 21 Things You May Not Know About the Indian Act is another. I just got to part 2. So I've gotten through the 21 things. This is also a very slow read, very dense, very depressing. And the second half is about like things to do. So I think that'll be better, a better read. Drawdown, which is all the things and areas we need to enact change for climate change. So Drawdown, the big old book, 21 Things, the little book, it's taken forever. Sacred Economics, which I just started. And the one that I thought would lighten this up a little, Death at High Tide, because isn't that a pretty cover? The cute little cat. You'll never guess where it takes place. Anybody? It's by Hannah Dennison. I'm about halfway through in a couple of days. It's not really gripping me. It's okay. It's definitely like humorous, but not really my type of humor. Where is that? Where's it set? No, not Mississippi. What? Okay, it's set in Cornwall. That's why I picked this up, because I looked at the pretty cover and the cat, and then I saw that, it happens on Tregarrick Rock. It's a fictional Isle of Scilly off the coast of Cornwall. And it's one of these things where people go into a situation to investigate and they lie to get in there, and it's a stupid lie and they can't get out of it. And I don't really like that setup, but that's what's happened here. There's a really nasty guy, and like there's something wrong, but they can't figure out what's wrong yet. So that's how far I am. But since that is the last book that I'm talking about, and it's about Cornwall, there's lots of things about Cornwall this time. I'm going to also share a chocolate bar that I got called Chocolate Craft Chocolate Makers, which I found in one of the fancy chocolate shops down in Portland. And it's based by the sea in sometimes sunny Cornwall. We're inspired by the ingredients on our doorstep and use traditional techniques. This one is, I took the wrapper off that said what it was. Anyway, it's using gorse flowers for the scent, which is very hard to pick because they're very thorny and scratchy, but it's a lovely, like, coconutty scent that is infused into the chocolate. So well done, Chocolate. I've never heard of them before, but the gorse flavored chocolate bar, top tier. Yes, it's very tasty. I'm taking it very slow. I'm giving myself one bite at a time. I do that with like 3 bars at once so that I get like enough chocolate for the day, but I only draw it out the pleasure. So Kendall, current read, A Voice Like Mine by Deb Holland, who, oh yes, first Native American appointed to a U.S. president's cabinet. Very good. Yes, I knew the name, and then I was going to say, do we have a second one? Governor? Or she's still lieutenant governor in Minnesota? I've lost track of the news, but we were maybe going to have another federal official who is Native American. Drawdown is huge. Yes. Tyann, the read she's still reading is One of Us is Lying by Karen McManus. Is it your style of mystery or thriller? Because this isn't really my style. It's a little bit too like cozy because it's just implausible. But we'll see. We'll see if it has any more Cornwall tips and pointers. But that was my little Cornwall Daphne du Maurier links of biblioserendipity today. I just thought it was really cool how all that played out. From the book I finished, to the book I'm reading, to the chocolate I'm eating, to, you know, whatever else. It's just kind of neat. But that is, I didn't do any of the banners. There we go. We'll just finish with a banner. Thank you everyone for watching and being here and sharing your thoughts and being excited with me, because I think that was the theme today, is that all these thoughts, all these like interesting insights are just making me spark with new thoughts, which is fun. All right. Get going with yawn nonfiction or enjoy a saucy page turner. Whichever way you're turning, I hope you have wonderful reading. It is Wednesday. So yeah, read during the week. Read during the week. Don't wait. McManus, it's a YA. Okay. It's throwing you off, but it's all right. I'll finish it at some point. Yeah, I have several that are over there that I'll finish at some point. I hear there's more books and I won't start those probably. Yeah. All right. Thanks for watching, everyone. Diversify that reading shelf, and I will see you again on Friday. What topic? Who knows? We're freewheeling it these days. So I'll see you in the comments, and I'll see you again on Friday. Bye, everyone.